My name is Craig Rainey. They call me the Renaissance Man. Welcome to my podcast. What do you say we get started? It is really nice to speak with you again. It's been a little over a month since I had my last episode here on the podcast, and I apologize for that, but I really put my nose to the grindstone. I was reviewing some of the episodes I had, and I had been promising to finish up Reasonable Sin, the third book in the Carson Brand series. It's been 3 months. I'm almost done. And life was getting in the way. Anyway, I have completed the book. It is now published. It's edited. The cover's done. It's out. It's everywhere that you can buy books. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that process and a little bit about the book and what got in my way. But before we get to that, let me invite you to hit the like button right there. It's easy. It's fun. I do it all the time. I really enjoy it. I want you to enjoy that with me. The other thing is, I also, if you would like to get hold of me, I'm very accessible. Get hold of me on my email at craig@craigrainey.com. My website is craigrainey.com, and my web magazine is craigrainey.info, or just look up Craig's Online Magazine. I think it's Craig Rainey Magazine. Oh man, I'm really not prepared, am I? But anyway, it's a blog site. This is the spoken word. That's the written word. But a lot of times these podcasts will end up there. I've got software that does the conversion poorly. I spend a lot of time editing. But anyway, I do encourage you to check out that. Also on the podcast, easy for me to say, on the podcast, you do hear some stories, but on the blog site, I put out short stories occasionally, and a lot of it, much like this podcast, seems to be a stream of consciousness, but I've actually got a point I'm trying to make here. And finally, I would encourage you to get the first book in the Carson Brand series for free. That's right. It is absolutely free. And there's only one catch. Doesn't cost you any money, and there's no danger. The one catch is that you register on my readers group, which, by the way, makes you a member of my family. And I do not spam friends or family. So the two promises I'll make to you is, one, I will not spam you and try to get a bunch of money out of you. The reason you're there is just to keep up with me. I'm hoping that my writing and the content that I produce is good enough that I don't have to pay you to be a fan. I would hope that you look forward to those books, as most people I hear from on my readers group too, and they buy them. It's as cheap as $4.99 for a Kindle, all the way up to $24.99 for a hardcover, which is available on Amazon and soon to be offered on Barnes & Noble, some of the other places. I'm working on that. But, of course, most of my paperbacks are between $9.99 and $14.99. It just depends on how well they sell. But anyway, please sign up for my readers group, and you will get the first book, Stolen Valor. The first in the Carson Brand series, you'll get that for free. And it's Kindle, Apple. I think Kindle they don't even use Mobi anymore, but it's an EPUB. It's available for any platform that you've got, whether it's a Sony reader, whatever. I've got the platform, or I've got the story that'll fit that platform. Anyway, to get back to it, as I mentioned, for the past, and I was reviewing, and it's almost unforgivable to keep teasing that, this book is coming, and then just not get it out there. And so anyway, on September 9th was the release date, 2022, just in case you're taking notes there. But so completely edited, completely on the shelf, it's there. But what I wanted to share with you is I wanted to share why it took me so long. And the excuse I'm about to give you is one that every writer is guilty of, and every writer should avoid. In fact, you'll hear me rail against it in some places, like, well, how do you create the time to write? And that's what it comes down to. Life got in the way. I've got a daytime job, and it was very busy. My wife and I, we did a little bit of traveling, but in fact, I'd mentioned that I went to Canada, and we spent almost 2 weeks there, and it was just liberating how much I was able to write. And that's really, I think, what set me in motion to finish the book as rapidly as I did towards the end. And but when you're writing a novel of between 80,000 and 100,000 words, it does take a large amount of your time to finish that. And I'm making no excuse, because I don't think there's any reason not to. The love of my life in order is my wife, my family, and my writing. And leaving that third one out, if all the 100 things that we could be in love with in our life, leaving that third thing out is it's unforgivable if you consider yourself an author and a writer. I really believe that. And so for that, I do ask your forgiveness that it took so long to do, and that to finish, and that I made so many excuses. But what I did is I just sat down and started writing. And after the Canada trip, which I must have penned 10,000 words when I looked at it later, it took me another month and a half to finish everything up. But the creative juices were going, and the motivation was going, and it was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. And as an author, any of you out there who do this art, this craft, this business, if you want to call it, being an author is very fulfilling when you finish that book. And I've seen movies where, they pour the cognac and smoke the cigar. I think it was Misery. They did that. I'm not so formatted as that. What I do is when I finish, there's really no, I don't know, there's no ritual I go through. I just usually order an author's copy off of Amazon or Ingram, who's one of my distributors, and I'll wait for it to come in. And when it comes in, I'll look at it and have a lot of pride that, hey, I produced something that will outlive me, and that, hopefully people will read, 20, 30, 40 years from now and say, hey, this is a good book. And that old Craig Raney, he's a dead guy now, right? Yeah, but the story lives on. And I think that's ultimately what we want. I said once when I was younger, and let me start back in the story. I think I told this once before, but there was a very wealthy self-made millionaire that was being interviewed on TV. And if you've already heard this, I apologize. It's quick. And he was being interviewed, and the person who was interviewing said, hey, everybody knows you're a self-made millionaire. You started from nothing, and so you're self-made, and now you're the richest person and, one of the richest people in the world. To what do you owe your success? And he said, well, before I give you the answer to the second part, let me explain the first part. Each and every one of us is self-made. It's only the rich ones, typically, that will brag about it. The guy under the bridge is self-made. The person that works at the minimum wage job is self-made. The one that helps people, a doctor, whatever, they're self-made. We are all self-made. And that speaks to the point that I'm talking about as far as writing a book. Well, I'm self-made. And if I decided to take off 3 months and make excuses for not completing something that I'm so passionate about, well, I made that excuse, so I have to live with it. But that's really not the point that I was making with that. What I would make, the point I would make with it is this, that the excuses, the reasons for doing things, the reasons for not doing things, and all that is on us. It's who we are. If you're not as successful in your life as you want to be, well, change it. It's completely within your power to be what you want to be. And now our country is changing, and I don't do politics here. Our country is changing, and not for the better. But the one thing that has not changed is opportunity. There's plenty of opportunity here, and it's still going on. And I think that opportunity is what's going to save us from all the other outside pressures to not take that opportunity. We keep doing that. We can do what we want to. There is nobody that's trying to break out of this country. There's nobody running across the border heading the other direction because they think there's more opportunity. People are coming here, and they're coming here by the millions because they know that all they have to do is try, and they'll be successful. So, that's the formula. And when it came to writing this book, my third book, and I've got the hardcover sitting here in front of me, Reasonable Sin, I just had to try. And once I decided to try, I succeeded. Let me talk about the book a little bit. Now that I've chewed everybody out, myself particularly, the book is the third episode, the third book in the Carson Brand series. And just really briefly, for those of you who have not read Carson Brand, first off, shame on you. It's very inexpensive, very easy to get hold of, and you should read it. It's actually a pretty good read, considering that I'm one of those indie guys. It is surprisingly well written, is what I've been told. I'm not sure if I'm complimented by that or if I'm not, but I'll take it. I'll take it because I have definitely sampled some awkward prose in some of these indie books. And one thing before I go into the book, I need to say this. I've talked to so many people that once they find out that I'm a writer, they find out that I'm an author, they say, "Yeah, I've been wanting to write a book, and I'd like to do it." And my answer to them is, "Well, you should. You should. If you want to do it, you should do it." Now, saying that to someone is the same as someone saying, "I would really love to be a brain surgeon," and I would say the same thing. Then, well, if you'd love to do that, you should do it. But like writing, the road is hard. Like writing, there's a lot to learn to get from point A, I want to do it, to point Z, I'm good at it, and people are enjoying it or benefiting. In the case of the brain surgeon, they're living. They are becoming better because as a brain surgeon, you help them. And with writing, it's the same thing. I've said many times on this podcast and just to folks that I meet that the easiest or the hardest part of the writing process is the business part of it, getting it out there, creating a product that competes with the big publishing houses, and writing prose that people go, "Oh wow, this is really well written." I saw a book the other day, and I shouldn't even try to do this without coming to it's a book about 9/11. It is 9/11 today, and this book was talking about. It says something about this is the time for remembering, or something of that nature. Anyway, I'm not going to use that example because I'll come back in the next podcast and I'll give you what I was saying. It's a real nuance in the language. It's the difference between saying I'm going to throw the horse over the fence some hay, or I'm going to throw some hay over the fence for the horse. It's a nuance. It's minutia in writing. It's how you deliver information and the message. Now, to most of you out there, you're saying, well, there's not a whole lot of people that are going to really catch that. Yes and no. There are many people that will not catch it based on that. Well, I'm going to throw the horse over the fence some hay, or I'm going to throw hay over the fence for a horse. It's a nuance, and people go, well, I still get what you get. But when you're reading, and this is the big thing, when you're reading a book and something clunky like that gets in front of you, whether you recognize it as being incorrect or poor syntax or just poor grammar, whatever it may be, or whether you don't, it's going to give you that pause. It's going to raise that little red flag. And if that red flag's kind of in the back, it's kind of a pink flag. It's not really red yet, but enough of those pink flags become pretty much the hue of red to the reader, and they will stop reading your book. I've seen this happen. It happened to me. I was reading a book, and I just had to stop. I just closed it and walked away, and I'm not one that gives up that easily. I hang on when I'm in the throes of reading a book. But this one I just couldn't take. It was highly recommended to me. I started reading it and thought, well, this thing has won some awards and everything else, but it was so bad. And I'm sorry to say that because, how do you say that about art? How do you say art is bad? When I was in the music business, I was a professional drummer. Some of you know that about me. I owned an artist image development company out of South Texas, and mainly we had teenage girls in those days in the 90s try to get into the country western music business. So what I would do is I would get songs together for them. I would help them record their demo CD, and I'd get them out to a place like the Stock Show and Rodeo and give them a showcase where they could play, and then I would put behind them on stage, some really talented musicians, and they'd get a chance to do their thing. And so the difference between the professional in the music business and the non-professional is easily heard. It's not just vocal ability. It has to do with how you are live when you're front of band. It has to do with if you're able to, vocal ability is a huge part of it. I get that. But as a drummer, I was a professional drummer, and I took years of lessons and years of practice, and I won a few awards, and I was well known. I had people calling me for work at one point, but I knew all these rudiments. I knew all these solos. I knew all these little patterns, and everything from bossa novas. I could play with any band, But most of the gigs, I never used any of that stuff. But all that stuff that I knew supported what I did as just a basic job of keeping the beat, keeping time in studio, whether I needed a click track or not. All those things added up to the proficiency that I showed in every little aspect of my work. And I think in writing, the same thing applies. The more you write and the more you read, the better you are at it. But as they say, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So I spend a lot of time working on my practice and working on what I do to make it better. And still, I mean, I'm working on my 6th book right now, and which doesn't seem like much. It's a lot to me because I got started in this in 2018. But it's a process. And so when people tell me they want to just, I'd like to write for a living, just understand that the business aspect of it is more difficult, I think, than writing the prose. And now that also presumes that you've got a skill set at writing. If you aren't good at writing, and I mean, keep in mind, writing is the medium by which I deliver a story. I'm a storyteller. It's what I do for a living. And so if you're not good at telling a story, you may not be a good writer, because putting that story down in writing and delivering it in a certain way so that it appeals to the reader, because the reader at the DNA level is hardwired to receive stories in a certain order, in a certain way, explained a certain way, described a certain way. The characters have to fulfill certain criteria, and as you learn more about the business, you learn more about that. And so there's a lot more to it than that. But the business end of it is really difficult because a lot of times the business end of it isn't something you can just go buy a book and get done. And okay, well, buy a book. This is how you do it. Amazon. I'm on Amazon. I've spent thousands on advertising with Amazon, and I'm super upside down with them because for some reason, no matter what I do in Amazon, I don't reach my readers. I don't reach my audience. And I'm not sure why. I know that when my distributor advertises on Amazon, they get marquee service. They get front row. And it may be because they do a lot more than I do, whatever it may be. But it's obviously not money that buys that. It must be influence or something else, because I know this, that the thousands that I've put into advertising, and I've listened to all the YouTube videos, and I've read all the online forums, and I've read the Amazon instructions, and the KDB guru and everything. I've done all that, and I still don't reach them. I get way more reviews on Smashwords and Kobo than I get on Amazon, and anyway. I'm not complaining. It is what it is. This is the terrain of the market and the industry that I apply. So, I'm just sharing with you what I run into on the business end. A big one is trying to get, trying to make your book look professional enough so it looks like a big major publishing house put it out, and that costs money. It takes time. You have to know some things about it. I recently joined a club called Your First 10,000 Readers. It's a great one. You want to talk about some really, really good information on that. I'm not going to tell you much more about it. I'll let them do their own advertising, but man, it helped me with my covers. At one point, if you followed me, I had different covers on all my books than I have now. And the reason for it is because one of the things they recommend is we'll focus group this focus group your covers, and have some pros take a look at it, see what they think. And you want to talk about an ego check. That was difficult. That was a hard time. But them telling me that my covers did not match the genre, that the people that read what I write, my demographic is not going to pick that book up because it lacks the basic components they are looking for in their type of book they read. Well, you have two choices. You can just be hard-headed and say, well, I'm just going to do it my own way and whatever. Or you can say, well, in life I'm a student, including this, and I'm going to set the pride aside, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do it this way. I kid you not. As soon as I changed them, my sales jumped double just by people looking at it and seeing a different cover on there. So it cost me quite a bit of money to rebuild those covers, because I have a professional cover artist that does this, and each one it's expensive. It costs some money. And when you've got 4 or 5 books that have to be completely redone, it can run to a few $1,000s. That being said, there are also a lot of pitfalls in these indie publishing houses that come out, and I've talked to them all. I've been on the phone with them. I have gone through it, and luckily, I waited till I knew a little bit more than the novice usually does, more than I knew when I got into it. But I spent enough time with bona fide professionals and bona fide industry leaders who are, who can help you. And I was lucky enough to chat with them and get some information. So when I talk to these publishing houses that claim, for this amount of money, we'll get you out there in front of this, in front of that. And what I found is they were saying this. They go, well, I can get you in with Amazon. Well, I'm in with Amazon. I can get you distribution through Ingram and Ingram Spark. Well, I'm with Ingram Spark. And I can get you in Barnes & Noble. And then, after a little while, I'll get you physical books. I have physical books in Barnes & Noble. So I found that I didn't have to pay them between $5,000 and $25,000, depending on who you talk to make these things happen. Now, I'm not a cheap guy. I invest money and I put money into the business where I have to. And I've got a good day job, so I'm well funded. I can do what I want, but I don't believe in throwing money away. And so I didn't do that. Now, it's made the road for me a little bit slower in that I haven't put money in certain aspects of my writing, in the business of writing, I should say, that I should. But I really want to, I really want to do certain things myself. I really want to climb that mountain by myself. I don't want to take the elevator up. And so some of it's, I'm a little hard-headed, but overall, the point I'm making on this is that the business end is very difficult. So if you're looking at wanting to write a book, and you want that novel or nonfiction or whatever it may be, you want it to sell, I recommend you do work on it. I'd recommend you do get your education. Don't take the quick way out and pay some hack publishing company that's going to take all your money and give you what you could do if you're willing to put a little time into it. It won't cost you that kind of money, and you'll know the business. You'll know what they're doing, so you won't need to go to them with every book. See, right now I put a book out. If I want to get into Indigo in Canada, I know how to get there. If I want physical books in Barnes & Noble and I want to do a book tour, I know how to do that, and I can get in there because they'll listen to me. They carry my books. They carry my stuff, and I had to learn through them. And I talked to the store managers and said, hey, what do you look for? And I know 1,000 people approach you trying to get a book, and they roll their eyes. Oh, yeah, especially those Amazon people. And I obviously didn't tell them I'm an Amazon guy, but I asked what they look forward to, what they look for in these books to make sure they're a pro, and everything from imprints to whether they're returnable to how they look, reviews, whatever it may be. Those are the things that that they look for. And I noticed when I hand them a book at Barnes & Noble, they look at it, they open it, they go, "Hey, this is nice." And a lot of times I'll give them the book that I've got there to say, "Hey, well, let me sign it, let me give that one to you." And that's a little, it's better than a business card. And a paperback book, I think my cost is around $5 to make one. So really, I'm sign it, give it to that assistant manager. A lot of them, if they don't read my stuff, if my stuff is not their genre, I won't do that. I think that if I see interest, I'll say, hey, well, I've got it here. Would you read this if I gave it to you? They go, well, sure. And these guys might have just loads of books that in their collection that they'll never read. I don't know, but generally it's a show of goodwill. But anyway, the point I'm making is that it takes more than just giving books to get into Barnes & Noble, by the way. When I first got started, I was making my own covers because I thought, hey, I'm kind of artistic. I can do it. Ooh, fail. Bad fail. It did not work. I only did one book that way, and then I realized that I was not qualified to do that, so I got an artist to take care of it. But, the business end, distribution, advertising, making sure that your books are available and people can get them quickly. That is probably the biggest pitfall. And that's print on demand, POD, or book on demand. They're called both ways. And that's one of those where if you don't have a supply chain where somebody is housing an inventory for you, then you're going to have to sell book on demand and print on demand, which is a good place to start. I've been doing that for years, but sometimes on Amazon, which they've gotten better because I'm selling books, so they seem to print mine up and have them ready to go. It used to be it'd take 2 weeks to get one of my books, one of my paperbacks, and if somebody's making an impulse buy, they want to see that here the next day. Well, because I've sold enough of them with Amazon, they're starting to they print mine now, and they have some, some in reserve just for that. I know even Reasonable Sin, which just came out, I talked to some folks. There were at least 2 people that contacted me and said, man, I ordered it. I got it 2 days later. And that's, that's what you shoot for. That's what you go for. Again, that's part of the business. That's positioning and everything else. So anyway, the reason I mention this is because I want you to know that if you want to write a book, you should do it. But understand that you're about to have to learn an entire industry. You're going to have to learn a whole profession to do this. Writing is difficult as far as learning how to do it and the way it should be done in the format. And, I've mentioned on some other podcasts, some of the books you should read to get there. The 6 core competencies and these kind of things. These are things you need to know. But then the business side, whole different can of worms. I mean, it is something else. And I'm not a pro yet. I'm not the best at it, but I'm getting pretty good. I'll give myself about an 85% on it. And I'm probably 6 months away from 95%. I don't think anybody gets to 100 on it. But anyway, as a result, I don't really seek a publisher. I think that I can do just fine on my own. It's going to take a little bit of money on my part to get it done, but it always does. Even with some of these publishers, in fact, most publishers now, there's almost nobody's going to give you a full boat deal. You're going to have to throw some money behind it as the author, and you're just going to have to do it because they figured out that dropping $100,000 on an author and saying, okay, here's your 3-book deal, get started. That's not a sustainable model, particularly when there are millions of new books coming out every month from writers, and you have to compete with those. And, those folks, they're working for nothing. And every now and then they're going to hit. So, these publishing houses have adjusted their models where if you want to be a hybrid indie published author, and you can book that deal, I think that's a good deal. Anyway, but going back to the book, and by the way, if you have any questions about that, contact me, and maybe I can give you some ideas on how to get your first book out, or what you should look for, don't look for. I'm open to that. That's the reason I give you my contact info at the beginning. But anyway, in this book, Reasonable Sin, as I mentioned, it's the 3rd book in the series. It's now complete, and I think the cover art is beautiful on it. I'm looking at the hardcover here. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of around 300 pages, so it's a pretty quick read. And I'm really proud of it. I've talked a lot in the past about how characters arc, how they grow from book to book. And I had mentioned several times, on several occasions, I mentioned that, in a series, your characters are going to arc differently than they would just in a standalone book. And the reason for it is because if you have a character, and let's say that you decide this character is going to span 20 books in a series. Well, in one book, you don't want them to go from age 15 to age 85. You're going to want them to go from maybe age 15 to 15 years and 6 months or something of that nature. You're going to want to slow down that arc for that character. And the arc is more than just age. And review some of my podcasts if you want to have a little more of an idea what that is. But the thing is with the series, you want to make sure that your character grows somewhat in each one. I think that you have the danger, you could have the danger or experience the danger of being a little flat with your character. Whereas if your character is the same person in every book and deals with everything exactly the same way, now it does work. I've seen many books where it does. In fact, a lot of the action thriller novels authors who I compete with, their characters don't change. Their characters are the same thing, and these authors have decided, I'm not going to have a shelf life on this character as long as they have these traits and these personality traits and they're this type of person. They're going to, I'm going to sell books. I'm going to keep the story going. I am a little more of a fundamentalist on that, and I'm not here to argue with anybody that's doing this professionally and making a living at it. But I will say this, with Carson Brand, he's changing. And in the first book, he starts off just a regular guy, and through awful things happening in his life, he gets dragged into this nightmare life he's in. And so then that's in book 1. In book 2, he feels like he's put all those demons to bed, and then a whole new set of problems comes up, and so he works on that. And as you would guess in a spy novel, he has shot and killed a few people, and he has been shot at and hit, and all kinds of things has happened to him too, and that affects you as a human being. Today at 9/11, it would be 9/11. Everything on TV was about 21 years ago when the towers fell and we were attacked, and it brought back I don't know, a lot of pain and a lot of memories because it's any of you who are old enough to remember that day. I was 38 years old when it hit, and I watched it on TV before I went to work, and it's affected me all my life. And when it came back, I realized, man, that kind of left a scar, and that little scar has been scratched at, and now it's bleeding a little bit. If a scar can do that, but it brought some of those feelings to the surface, and I think that's the way we are as human beings. If your characters aren't affected by the things they go through, and in these action thriller books, these folks your characters go through some awful stuff. If you or I actually went through these things just at one point in our life, it would change us. We would, we would not be the same people that we are today. It would change us. And so, I mean, you don't want this person to be in an insane asylum or, under a therapist's care from now on because of what they saw, but you do want it to affect them. You do want it to make a mark. And so with Carson Brand, he started off in Stolen Valor, which, again, I'll remind you, is not a military-based book. It's, I think, a clever turn. It comes at the end of the book. You'll figure out why it's called that. But he started off just a regular guy, and he found himself in extraordinary circumstances, and he had to adapt. And luckily, he had a base skill set that helped him. But in a lot of cases, he was almost lucky to do, and he had some other outside forces that got involved that he was able to hide within, and this kind of thing. So anyway, if you read it, you'll see. Then Dark Motive came out, and with Dark Motive, he changed a little bit. Dark Motive, he was. I'm not going to say he was dour, but he was not quite so footloose and fancy free. He was not. He didn't have the same sense of humor as he did. He wasn't a guy after work, go grab a drink and sit around and listen to country music and get ready to go home and go to dinner with his girlfriend or his wife or anything. He wasn't that guy anymore. He was embracing a harder life. He had some things that had gone on in the previous book, which was, a couple of months before, and he was having to deal with those. And was he going to deal with those with alcohol? Well, I mean, he doesn't talk to a lot of people. He doesn't have that support system because he's not married. He doesn't have the family to fall back on. So how he's going to do it? So that was a decision that was made on my part on how he was going to handle it. So he got through the second book, and then the third book, Reasonable Sin, it's catching up with him. He is realizing that the things that he is doing in his life to get by and to survive are things that it's a line that he crossed that he didn't even know he was crossing at the time, but once it's crossed, it can't be uncrossed. It can't be, what you see, and you can't unsee it. You can't unremember it. And so it's affecting him to the point that at times he'll think back, man, I really yearn for the days when I didn't have all this against me, when I wasn't having to go through this. And, that's what this book has to do with. And Reasonable Sin, I've had people say, well, what does reasonable sin mean? And I'd say I guess it's the motto or the logo on the front would say the best, limit a man's ability to do right. He will justify his reasons for doing wrong. And I think that sums up Carson Brand in this book perfectly. And I think it would sum up anybody that went through what he's gone through in the last two books. I've got to be careful not to become morose in this, and it doesn't do that. You also have to be careful not to overplay the hand. I mean, this guy he has accepted his fate. He's accepted who he is and what he does now. He's accepted the fact that things have changed. He is a bit melancholy about the fact that it has changed, and he's nostalgic about going back to the days when it wasn't that way, but he knows that's not a real option for him. So, we adapt. In 2011, I broke my back. Some people know that. And it changed me quite a bit. I guarantee it changed my golf swing. You don't put two titanium rods in your back and have the same swing you had before. And so I had to adapt. I can still hit the ball 300 yards on the drive, and I'm still pretty straight, but I had to change the way I go about doing it. And I say that to say this, that with Carson Brand, He's had to change the way he goes about being happy. He has to change the way he goes about associating with people. He changes the way he goes about living and making money and solving his own problems. And so these things change. When I broke my back, it didn't mean all of a sudden I was sad the rest of my life. I'm a happy guy. Everything's good. Everything's coming up roses. I just had to change the way that I live my life. It's kind of like if you ever buy a new home or have your home remodeled, which most of you know, I know something about that. You change the way you occupy the space. You change where you take coffee in the morning, where you have your drink in the evening, where you have your dinner. You change the way you sleep in your bedroom because it's a new bedroom. If you remodel, the same thing. And in the same way in life, when things happen to us, we change the way we occupy the space of life. So anyway, that's what's happening here. So I'm not overplaying my hand, but one other side effect hit me on this. I am now 10% into the next book. I went from some guy that took a month and a half to almost 2 months to, get myself writing again. And after, 2 days after publishing this book and it's out, I am nearly 10,000 words into the fourth book, which is the title, by the way, is Sovereign Rule. And it's another Carson Brand. It's Carson Brand novel number 4. But anyway, it's funny how things work in that and how you can go from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds if you have the right motor. And a lot of metaphors in this episode. I apologize, and you're welcome. But anyway, I don't want to take a whole lot more of your time. I just wanted to visit with you for a second and chat with you about why I took a while to do this and. Well, I shouldn't have, and that the book is out, and I would encourage you to buy it. It's do that. And as I mentioned, if you want to read the first one, read it for free. StolenValorNovel.com is the website where you can get that book for free. Just get on there, become part of my readers group, and I'll let you know about stuff. I give free things away too, but you start that book, and they are standalone, but each book does refer back to incidents and happenings that happened in the books previous. And even though it's somewhat explained, I find that the people who have read all three go, man, I really like that when the book references something that happened in a previous book, I've read it and I know what it is. And so I recommend that. But anyway, I'm not going to make any promises on when the fourth book in the series is going to be out, but I think that I'm shooting for the first of the year and have that thing complete. I'm about to go. I always do my covers first. I'm just that guy. And so I'm thinking about January is when it should come out. And that will give me time to write at least one or two more in year 2023. But I want to thank y'all for spending a little time with me today and let me just meander through. And this was not my most prepared moment. And I feel the love because I know that that's me a lot. I really appreciate y'all discounting lowering your standards so that I can meander a little bit and maybe not get everything exactly right. But anyway, I really appreciate you. Really appreciate your time, and I know you could spend it doing a lot of things, and I'm glad you spent it with me. You have a great one.